BookTube. It's Roz.
And Tilly from Tilly's Shelf, and we're back for another discussing drama video.
Yes, and it's October.
Which means it's Victober.
So we needed to read a Victorian play, and because in September we read Othello.
Sad.
We needed something jolly.
Yes, so we thought, can we find a nice, really funny Victorian play to read for this month?
And Victorians sometimes have this
quite stern reputation
that people talk about Victorian values and being
a bit stuffy and moral
and whereas the truth is Victorians loved a laugh.
Yeah, they had a great sense of humour. They were always laughing at things.
Yeah. And in fact, I was not aware that there was a Victorian job. People could make a living in Victorian times as joke writers. Yes. I mean, I know people do it now, but that was a job even in Victorian times too. Yeah. They wrote, and you get books of humour and books of jokes, and anyway,
like you could go and buy a Victorian joke book.
Yes,
maybe we should read one of those next October.
And in fact, one of the classic humorous novels that when you ask people what's the funniest book you ever read. Is a Victorian one, Three Men in a Boat by Jerome K. Jerome.
Which I have never read.
Which when I heard that I was truly horrified because it's so funny and so charming and so Victorian. So next Victober
I will have to read Three Men in a Boat.
Is anyone reading Three Men in a Boat for Victober this year?
People mention it, I think.
Are you enjoying it? Is it as funny as we all make out? Yeah. I better reread it. Maybe I'll reread it when you read it. But it's not only the explicitly funny books that are funny, is it? Yeah,
so immediately when you say funny Victorians, I think of like Dickens, because I like almost every sentence, very much in a similar sense to Jane Austen, a generation before, almost every sentence has got some kind of witty, cynical mark in it, I suppose.
Yes, and he writes humour of characters, all his books, even those that are more tragic and more serious, they've always got the really the exaggeratedly funny characters, but nevertheless are revealing about human nature, and that's his joy, isn't it?
Good use of ridicule and caricature to explain things.
Yeah, and then other authors you'd think of as more serious, like Trollope or Eliot or whatever, still all their novels have a strong humour built in. I mean, Eliot, that's one of the things I love most about her. That she has a really sly sense of humour.
Yeah,
she'll describe a person or a sort of social setting, and she'll just like kind of drop in something that lets you know how she feels about them, or pulls out the ridiculous in human behaviour. So
I suppose that's something that Victorian authors as a whole were very good at. Like, they had these quite rigid conventions, but they also had a whole group of people who were constantly kind of laughing at or showing the ridiculousness, subverting.
Absolutely. And like Elizabeth Gaskell, last year I read Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell, and honestly one of the funniest books that I've read, and if you read like her North and South or Maybury, you don't think of her as a funny writer, but she does humour so well. So which great Victorian writers do we think don't really do humour? Hardy we associate with tragedy, don't we?
But he definitely also has those moments where he's making that little bit of humorous social commentary, or kind of laughing at his own characters. Like, it's not a constant in his work like it is in Dickens, because it wouldn't fit, but there are definitely moments where he's kind of twisting things a little bit to show you the ridiculous side of it.
Yeah, and something like Under the Greenwood Tree or The Trumpet Major has a stronger sort of light-hearted, humorous sort of strands in it. Yeah, I think so.
We couldn't think of anything funny by the Bronte sisters.
Any of them.
Okay, actually, I've just thought now. Tales of Angria, or so the Juvenilia
has humour.
Has definitely got humour and huge moments of kind of elements of farce and slapstick and so on.
And then they grew up, and
they grew up and got really, really serious.
Yeah, too serious. No. I'll have the Bronte fans will be down on me like a ton of bricks. And I do love, the Brontes, and I love. You just read Agnes
Agnes Grey, but I compared it in my review, well, the video when I mentioned it, I compared Agnes Grey to Mansfield Park, but Mansfield Park is a hilarious book, really, if you look out for it, whereas Agnes Grey just doesn't have that that sense of humour.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's why, although I appreciate the Brontes, they're not my favourite, unlike, say, Eliot, that I miss that, something like Wuthering Heights. It's great when you read it. When you read it as a teenager, you love that kind of passionate intensity and humourless quality. But now it's not.
Sorry, you're leaning on my hair.
Oh, sorry.
Too much hair.
But now it's
but let us know. Do you think that there's funny stuff in the Bronte sisters?
If I missed it, forgotten it.
Yeah, tell us about it.
Tell us.
In their adult works.
Yeah. But interestingly, like writers like Dickens and Eliot and Trollope and so on, when they use humour, sometimes they're using it to make social and political points.
Yes,
they've got ideas that they want to convey, and they use sort of irony or behaviour.
Particularly, I feel like particularly Dickens, he's quite often making these kind of sometimes quite overt points about, how, like the way that children are treated, for instance, and he makes it into a joke, and then by making it into a joke, he shows how wrong it is the way that children are treated, say in a workhouse or in school or something. Yeah. And that the aim that he had, we presume, is that he wanted people to think about that and treat people differently.
Differently, yeah. And I was thinking, in one of our previous discussing drama videos, we read Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw, and again, he uses humour to
make a point.
Whilst also writing good humour. Yeah. And there's a whole, sort of humorous strand in Victorian theatre.
Yeah, definitely so.
Yes.
So it wasn't too hard for us to find a funny Victorian play in the end.
Indeed. In fact, I'm just going to say that I'm going to stick my colours to the,
to the
mast now, and say that I think that the funniest single play ever written is a Victorian play. Would you guess which?
It would be The Importance of Being Earnest. Indubitably.
It really.
And I think the play that we ended up reading it did have aspects that reminded me of The Importance of Being Earnest.
Including characters called Jack and Gwendolyn, confusingly.
Was there a Gwendolyn?
Oh, no, there's not a Gwendolyn. No, Gwendolyn. Jack. There's a Jack. Yes, there's always Jack.
And people coming... People not being who they're expected to be, and people pretending to be different people, and turning up in places where they're not supposed to be turning up, and things like that.
Yeah. So the play that we read, which we better say, was the single most successful Victorian play of the Victorian era. In fact, Charley's Aunt by Brandon Thomas, written in 1892, and when its first run in London lasted, I had to write this down because it's a long number, 1,466 performances. It was that popular.
So people were obviously really, really enjoying this play.
This is what the Victorians like to watch.
Yeah. And I feel like it's the kind of funny play that, if that was your kind of entertainment, you could happily go and see it 4 or 5 times and just keep laughing at the kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, because you know what's going to happen, and so you'd enjoy it. Yeah, because it's basically farce. It's a farce.
Bit of slapstick.
Foolish slapstick farce.
Yeah. People running around in skirts and lifting their skirts up to show off their trousers, and and trying to rip their costumes off in the middle of the stage, and
people going out
people on the head with fans.
Yes, and accidentally or deliberately pouring tea into a top hat because it's on the table with the tea things,
chasing each other from place to place.
People going out one gate and then the other person comes through the door and missing each other and misdirecting people, and characters making little asides, So fun and foolish.
Yes, not necessarily deep.
No,
would you say?
No, this is not deep. This is not political. Not deep. It's a play about upper class twits,
running around being foolish,
but also being quite sweet and in love.
Yeah, fairly harmless.
Harmless.
Presents them as being silly, but not malicious.
And the main characters, the main male characters, are 3 students at Oxford. Mm-hmm. So the slightly scary bit is that these are people who are going to end up, like running
the country
or the empire.
these guys are going to be in charge during the First World War, which maybe explains things.
Yeah. But and yes, it basically plays on the assumption that, probably a right assumption, that young men's fascination with cross-dressing is intrinsically funny, especially if they end up kind of being stuck and having to carry it off and pretend they really are.
They really are Charlie's
from Brazil, where the nuts come from, for a prolonged period.
Yeah.
And then the real aunt
shows up,
and mayhem ensues.
Says, "Oh, I knew your late husband very well."
And so it's not. You could write the same play and, like, say, Shaw or Wilde would, and make it sort of biting satire about the English upper classes, and it isn't. It is interesting because Thomas was educated, but he left school at 14 and went into the Navy, and was a bookkeeper and then became an actor. So he's not from that class that he's writing about in this play, and the audiences
presumably weren't
mixed,
largely weren't,
audience, as it were. But it's like the way people love watching Downton Abbey or something, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose so. It's like this kind of fantasy world.
Which obviously was popular and enjoyed.
Yeah. But there's jokes made about social conventions.
Yes.
Like, for instance, these two girls show up to visit the two young men and their aunt, but when they realise that the aunt is not present, they have to run away because they're not allowed to be on their own with two young men. And there's jokes made about those kind of social conventions. Yes. But there's absolutely no attempt to subvert them or criticise them. It's just a laugh about how people behave. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah. But a good-hearted it's a kind-hearted play.
Yeah.
So there's not loads to talk about in it because
I think maybe the most interesting character is Brassett the butler.
Yes.
Who's the only one of them who actually has any ready money.
It's almost like a predecessor of Woodhouse's Jeeves and Wooster sort of scenario. Because he's the one, he's the sort of the sensible person.
Yeah, who actually knows what's going on.
And facilitates it. It all, in a sense.
Yeah.
Although the woman, the real aunt,
Donna Lucia de Alvadores.
Yes, she's also the sort of level-headed character that
moral and upstanding,
puts everything to rights in the end.
Yeah. And it's a comedy, so everyone ends up married in completely improbable circumstances.
And going to live happily ever after, no doubt.
And there's one bad character,
Spettigue, who gets his comeuppance in a sense.
No, he doesn't. He gets bribed.
He gets
bribed his niece to get married.
But he gets his comeuppance in that he's shown to fall in love with the young man who's dressed up as an elderly aunt.
Yes.
and so he's made to look ridiculous, and he's tricked into giving his permission for his
niece to get married.
So if you would like a laugh and you would like to understand what Victorians enjoyed watching and found funny, and get a nice little vignette of Victorian atmosphere, this is the play for you. I would say.
I thought it was delightful, and I'd recommend it. I'd love to see it in performance as well, because I think it would really be quite funny.
And funnily enough, it was one of the first plays that I ever saw performed live, because it's still performed as a play, but it's always been a popular choice, I think, for amateur dramatic societies and so on.
You just need some quite fun, over the top costumes and
big fan.
And,
a wig.
And like a table, and you're probably pretty much set.
Yeah. So, happy Victober, everybody. And we'll stop there, shall we?
Let's stop
there.
We need to pick a non-fiction play for November. And we'll be back for more discussing drama in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.